So nice to meet you. Were you in charge of our for the F&A? The sort of the F&A charge that we joined with Massachusetts on their lawsuit to put them, they capped it at 15%.
Oh, nice.
I wonder if that came through your office. I don't know. In any case, thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Rick Page. If some of you don't know me, I'm the Dean of Larner College of Medicine. It's really my privilege to join you today. It's actually my privilege to be upright. I've been ill with something that's been going around for a while. I wouldn't be here if I thought, first of all, tested negative. I wouldn't be here if I thought I was contagious at this point. But I am going to be extra careful today. This is a really special day, and I also want to welcome the many people who are online joining us today. This is a really special event today. This is our 6th annual celebration of gender equity in medicine and science. The Larner Gender Equity Initiative kicked off in September of 2019. Remember that? The before times, with an initial town hall that showcased the community's commitment to the struggle to achieve gender equity in medicine and science. I had recently arrived here at UVM, and I personally embraced the efforts to recognize, support, and uplift our community as we share our commitment to gender equity. This is a right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do. Diversity makes us better. This is evidenced by our current outstanding Larner leadership team and evidence seen in our faculty, staff, and students every day. Our inaugural award celebration was held the first week of March of 2020, just barely in the before times, and our Gender Equity Committee has continued its important work ever since. This brings us the Gender Equity Education Series, where every semester over the last few years, we've been exploring the work of building a just and equal environment, promoting our values of inclusive excellence. And each year we enjoy an event such as this, where we celebrate leaders in gender equity and commit to continuing these important efforts. Today's session continues that tradition, and I'm especially glad that Attorney General for the state of Vermont, Charity Clark, is here to give our keynote address. You'll hear more about her shortly. I'm also really pleased to be recognizing 5 members of our Larner community with this year's Gender Equity Awards, drawn from dozens of worthy nominees. It's a real affirmation of the depth of talent and strength in our Larner community. Gender equity at Larner has been propelled by the commitment of the members of our Office of Inclusive Excellence and our Gender Equity Steering Committee. Dr. Ann Doherty, Associate Professor of Obstetrics, Gynecology, and Reproductive Sciences, and Director of Gender Equity for the Office of Inclusive Excellence, has brought exceptional energy and thoughtfulness to bear on this issue and throughout our college and within the scientific community and the medical community. While Dr. Doherty is unfortunately not able to join us today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Joe Conant, Assistant Professor of Pathology and Co-Chair of the Gender Equity Education Work Group, who is going to be here representing the Gender Equity Steering Committee and assisting as we provide these very special awards. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Joe Conant, who will take over from here. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Conant.
Thank you very much. Let me get to the right page here. So first, while I'm trying to find the right page, I just want to say I started here as faculty in August of 2019. And so my entire professional attending career has been under the leadership and seeing a lot of this work that we've done in terms of the Gender Equity Initiative. And so I can say that I have personally really benefited from a lot of this work, and I'm really happy that I can contribute to this as well. So good afternoon. Welcome to the celebration of gender equity in medicine and science. Thank you so much, Dean Page, for your continued allyship and support in representing college leadership. at this incredibly important event. The celebration of gender equity is held each year during Women's History Month. And in a world striving for excellence, it is critical that gender inclusivity be a central piece of that conversation. Today, we celebrate all genders, particularly women and gender diverse individuals, and understand that the intersection of multiple identities adds extra layers of challenge. So as Dean Page mentioned, the Gender Equity Initiative began 6 years ago and has incrementally taken root thanks to all of you and your efforts in your spheres of influence, as well as in commitment in our leadership. Additionally, over the past 6 years, the Gender Equity Steering Committee, under the leadership of Dr. Ann Doherty, has worked hard and provided critical guidance to the Gender Equity Initiative. Current members of the steering committee and related working groups include myself, Leanne Holterman, Shrey Kadenga, James Stafford, Katie Wells, Pam Gibson, Laura Merriam, Natalie Feldman, and Eileen Tchaikovsky-Kelly. A number of those members are here in the room today, so thank you for being here. In the past 6 years, the Gender Equity Initiative has held countless events through the Gender Equity Education Series. It has bestowed 30 honors on our faculty, staff, and students through the Gender Equity Awards, and has supported several faculty members to attend prestigious professional development events, such as the Executive Leadership in Academic Medicine and Executive Leadership in Healthcare programs at Drexel University, as well as at the AAMC Early and Mid-Career Women Faculty Leadership Development Seminars. Here at Larner, 28 early and mid-career faculty members were able to attend an all-day career development seminar this past October. Some of your departments previously participated in a pilot of the Gender Equity Report Card, an effort to use data to measure equity within our college. Now, this is an incredibly laborious on the part of those who participated, and thank you for those of you that did. But the end result was that we were not only able to show that the data came out was meaningful and actionable, but also that we needed centralized resources to be able to collect and analyze data efficiently. Through this effort and in collaboration with our Office of Faculty, we're able to add a data analyst, Jessica Collins, to our team, who's working with HR and IT to harmonize data streams in the college so that we can say more about where we are and with respect to diversity and equity. And it is through this effort that we've been able to examine promotion data over the 5 years before the Gender Equity Initiative and the 5 years following the initiative's inception. So we found that the overall faculty numbers have increased and the gender gap is closing. The good news is that all promotions, regardless of gender, have increased over time. However, successful promotion for women, though decreasing over time compared to representation on faculty prior to 2019, showed an overwhelmingly positive trend after 2019. Male faculty promotions also increased by number, and trends were positive or comparable to trends prior to the Gender Equity Initiative launch. Similar trends persisted across the clinical, educational, and research pathways. However, women continue to lag behind men in the tenure pathway, and this is an area where we can focus. While I know it would be foolhardily to assign exclusive causation to the Gender Equity Initiative, I do know that a concerted effort was made beginning in 2019 with our launch to shine a light on gender equity and look deeply at institutional culture. Over the past 6 years, you have all made changes in your units that support inclusive excellence, and it goes without saying that support from leadership was critical. And so it's in this vein that we celebrate our achievements today and continue to push each other to do more. Now, before I introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, please allow me to address a few important housekeeping matters. For those participating in today's event remotely, a live captioning link will be provided in the chat. The lecture portion of this event is also CMIE accredited. There are no financial relationships from speakers or reviewers that need to be disclosed to the audience. The links to claim credit and to fill out the evaluations are available by scanning the QR codes and are also available in the Zoom chat for those that are attending remotely. Thank you for your attention, and without further delay, we can now welcome our keynote speaker. So it is with great honor that I introduce our distinguished keynote speaker, Attorney General Charity Clark. Charity R. Clark was sworn in as Attorney General of Vermont on January 5th, 2023, and is the first woman to be elected to this position. Since then, she has made protecting Vermonters a trademark of her administration, suing Monsanto for a PCB contamination of Vermont's waterways and schools, and bringing a case against Meta for Instagram's harm to young users' mental health. She also successfully advocated for the recommendations of the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Commission, housed in the Attorney General's office, and continues her work to bring focus on the issues of sexual and domestic violence. A passionate defender of reproductive rights, Attorney General Clark joined a challenge to ban a ban on the abortion drug mifepristone, allowing Vermonters to retain access to this safe and effective abortion medication. Attorney General Clark's career in the Attorney General's office began in 2014 as an assistant attorney general in the Public Protection Division. Later, she was appointed chief of staff, serving this role from 2018 to 2022. During her tenure as chief of staff, and the first person to ever hold this position, she oversaw the office's expungement clinics, training countless attorneys to assist Vermonters seeking to expunge or seal their criminal records. She also championed the effort to achieve status as a breastfeeding-friendly employer and create a dedicated space for breastfeeding employees and visitors to the office, an effort that she would bring to fruition during her first few months as Attorney General. Attorney General Clark was born and raised in Southern Vermont and grew up working in her family's grocery store in Londonderry's Clark's IGA. She's a graduate of Burr and Burton Academy in Manchester, the University of Vermont, and Boston College Law School. Before she entered law school, Attorney General Clark was a policy analyst at the Vermont Governor's Office under Governor Howard Dean. In 2005, she began her legal career as an associate at a law firm in Burlington, and later in New York City. Attorney General Clark is an avid skier and hiker, completing the Long Trail in 2021. That's not an easy feat, so congratulations. She's the chair of the board of her town library and serves as the Justice of the Peace. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Attorney General Clark.
At the time I was first elected over 2 years ago, 25 men and 0 women had been elected Attorney General of Vermont. I was sworn in wearing a white pantsuit in homage to the suffragettes, as is tradition for women firsts. My journey to that white pantsuit involved a lot of grit and a lot of grace. I am here today to tell you the story. As was mentioned, I grew up in Southern Vermont. I worked weekends and summers at my family's grocery store in a ski town called Clark's Market. And from the time I was 10, I saw the world through the eyes of the shoppers at the grocery store. Elderly people buying cans of Dinty Moore beef stew. My sister's here, so she's remembering this as well. Wealthy skiers buying special order filet mignon. I remember when I was in law school, someone bought a $93 piece of meat. I was vegetarian at the time. Mothers with kids crawling all over them, people paying with food stamps, construction workers buying grinders for lunch, the full spectrum of humanity. Not surprisingly, I have been very community-minded ever since. In my small town, I knew of exactly 0 lawyers who were women, but I was inspired by who I did see. The first and so far only woman governor of Vermont, Madeleine Kunin. She came to my town for Green Up Day when I was a child. I mention this because, again, my sister is here. She got to ride in a convertible with the governor, and I did not. I'm still bitter despite my achievements. At the time, I was so proud that Vermont was one of 2 states in the country to have a woman governor because of women like Governor Kunin and eventually the real women lawyers I saw on TV, lawyers like Hillary Clinton and Anita Hill. I could maybe get a hazy glimpse of myself here today as the 28th Attorney General of my home state. One of my goals as AG has been to be that woman for girls, for teenagers, for young women and women of all ages, and that is truthfully the reason why I'm here today. Last year, I met with a group of young anti-vaping activists, all girls, and recently was excited to see the same girls at a different conference. They were very excited to see me again, but one 6th grade girl observed Riley, "You wore the same dress last year." So in my office, we have a joke that Attorney General Barbie doesn't always deliver. I almost wore that dress today just to be funny, but I wore this instead. But this is all just to say, to be a woman first is to know that you are always wearing the white pantsuit, whether it be to serve as a role model for people coming up behind you, or making sure that I am finding those opportunities for change that may have been missed by my accomplished and wonderful predecessors who were all men. Changes like fighting for abortion rights, making reforms to addressing domestic violence, or ensuring that mothers on Medicaid can get breast pumps before the baby arrives so they'll be ready if baby needs to visit the NICU. Did I mention my sister's a lactation consultant? Part of the grace that I have tried to bring to my role is to crack open what enabled me to be a trailblazer. In my acceptance speech on election night in 2022, when I was first elected, I thanked individually by name every single childcare worker who cared for my daughter when she was a baby and then when she was a toddler, so I could go work at the Attorney General's office. It was the only moment of the night where I got choked up, and hopefully the only moment today also. I'm sure some of you in this room can understand why. I have been very fortunate to have the support from so many people like those childcare workers as I made my way in my career. But the truth is, the road has not always been easy. At my first job at a law firm, there were 40 men and 2 women, both child-free and approaching retirement age. Sexism, misogyny, bias, mansplaining, and microaggressions have been a common occurrence throughout my professional life, but especially as I began to take on leadership roles. I have been told more than once that I was too pretty to be a lawyer, meaning I don't look like what someone pictured. I had a judge teaching a trial practice course tell me I had a beautiful smile and needed to smile more at the jury. I believe I am only the second statewide elected official to be a mom of school-age children, and I am the first single mother in Vermont's history to serve in a statewide elected office. Here I have reached arguably the pinnacle of my profession, but having worked under 2 male attorneys general, I unfortunately can see the ways I am treated differently than they were. As the first AG in living memory to have served on the AG's leadership team, helping to manage the office for several years prior to becoming Attorney General, perhaps you're wondering if this differential treatment was positive because I was so qualified. Alas, no. Instead, I have experienced what we have learned is called role incredulity. When someone just can't believe that me, a woman, is actually in charge. And I will say, in using grace and smarts, I have tried to navigate my way through this, and it's been incredibly helpful to have a team who supports me, men and women, who are very aware of this, and they are very aware in part because I had a training when I first started about bias against women in leadership roles, and that's where we learned the term role incredulity, which I have reflected on many times since that training. You may face the same in your careers, but I hope, like me, you know who you are and that you can keep your sense of humor. For example, by creating, as I did, an album of screenshots on my phone called Social Media Hate and Online Come-Ons. I hope in your work, you will not be getting called, as I did, a gay Nazi kidnapper. I am not gay, but I would definitely kidnap a Nazi. A nag, a whore, or being told you should get comfy wearing an orange jumpsuit, or that all women should stay in the kitchen, that you have sexy feet, or my all-time favorite, I have actually laughed so hard, I cried over this one for some reason, that you're going to fail because you look stupid when you talk with your teeth showing. So you're in the medical profession, so if anyone here has an idea of how to talk without your teeth showing, please let me know. If this happens to you, I hope you know it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Remember that being a woman leader also comes with advantages over men too. For example, in the summer of 2023, Vermont endured devastating flooding. I'm sure most of the people listening here experienced that as well. And that included in Montpelier, our state capital, where my office is. Our office was flooded. We were displaced for many months. The day after the flooding, I went on social media and I said with feeling, Vermont, our hearts are breaking to witness the devastating flooding we have experienced in Vermont. I, as a woman, was allowed to express myself with feeling, to express emotion freely. Men in our culture are severely restricted from doing that. Like the mom I am on that social media post, I also urged everyone to stay safe and not be tempted to tour the damage. I took a similar approach on social media when Donald Trump was elected president last November and posted a video expressing compassion and reassurance. That is a gift that we as women have that they don't have. Lean into it, is my advice. When I considered running for office, someone told me that you never know when your country might need you, but you should be ready to answer the call. For me, that call came to me on November 5th, this past year, when I was called upon to be the very best leader I could be. I was reelected to protect Vermonters, and that's exactly what I've been doing ever since. As Attorney General, I have the ability and responsibility to sue the federal government if they violate the Constitution or federal law. I, after all, swore an oath in my white pantsuit to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. So far, I have sued the Trump administration 5 times for illegal and unconstitutional actions, and I have done that with my fellow attorneys general across the country. There are 23 Democratic attorneys general. Maybe we will come a point where even the Republican attorneys general, who I am sure are feeling very uncomfortable right now, will join the fight against unconstitutional and illegal actions taken at the federal level. Every single time the president violates the law or the Constitution, I will be there. I took that oath to defend the Constitution, but also because I believe in America. I believe in its structure of democracy, those 3 branches of government, and of course, federalism that gives Vermont our sovereignty, along with all the other states in our country. Vermont elected me to advance their values, protect our rights, and uphold the rule of law. My job, as I see it, is to fight for you. There is one lawsuit I brought against Donald Trump that may be of particular interest to this R1 research institution. When the Trump administration tried to freeze the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, grants for biomedical and public health research, I sued. The freeze would have had an immediate impact on UVM. It would have likely required you to immediately lay off staff, cancel research projects, but it also would have had a longer-term impact, of course. The loss of funding represents tens of millions of dollars of lost revenue, fewer doctors and medical researchers coming to our state, and of course, the loss of the cutting-edge research trials that offer patients new and novel treatment options. I am proud to say the federal judge agreed with our arguments that this action was unconstitutional and illegal and issued an order enjoining the Trump administration from implementing the freeze. This moment is why I became a lawyer. As I like to joke half seriously, suing people is my love language. But this is why I chose public service, and this is why I ran to be your Attorney General. I am a 10th generation Vermonter on both sides of my family. There is maple syrup running through my veins. I love Vermont with my whole heart and fight with everything I have to protect the place and the people I love so much. Over the next several years, it's very likely your professional lives, as well as your personal lives, could be impacted due to new federal policies. Nevertheless, keep researching and improving health equity for women, keep providing the best patient care you can, and treat your patients with respect and dignity no matter who they are. Stay engaged and speak up whenever you can. Be brave, be bold. Live Vermont's values of equity, neighborliness, belief in the good of government, love of the outdoors, and the ethos of community-mindedness you saw maybe at town meeting this week, or sometime at the farmer's market, or at a Vermont Green soccer game, or maybe like me at the grocery store. When I was first about to run for office, people liked to tell me rumors about all the men who were also thinking of running for Attorney General. And I would say fine, because this is a glass ceiling shattering race and I am showing up with my hammer. And indeed I did, and on election night, I gave members of my team and my daughter and her friends little silver hammer necklaces so they could remember what it takes. I still have my hammer, and now I'm using it for democracy. Women in this room are making history too. There is an image I see when I think of the historic nature of my tenure as Attorney General. It is that I am holding hands in a chain through time with the women who came before me, women like Madeline Kunin, like my great-grandmother who graduated valedictorian of Black River Academy in Ludlow in the 1930s, but never went to college and never had a career, like the girls who traveled from Vermont to work in the woolen mills in the 1880s, like the women who kept the farms during the Civil War, like my Puritan ancestors who made their way to the lush wilds of what is now Vermont, and so on and so forth through time. Those women are rooting for me and for you. Thank you. The Q&A. So, but did you want to, and I don't know who will be helping with questions that might be online. You got it, okay.
Yeah, so we've got plenty of time to have questions. We have members of our audience in here. Olive will be walking around with a microphone. So if you have any questions, feel free, or comments, feel free to raise your hands. Folks who are here in joining us virtually, you can also put your questions in the chat. And we will have folks who will be moderating that as well. So first, I just want to thank you so much for being here today and joining us in celebration of gender equity and kind of sharing your wisdom and some of the experiences that you've had. I guess I have one, while we wait for folks to kind of raise their hands and stuff, I did want to kind of prepare something. And I want to thank you for all that you've done. I also you've mentioned some of the things that you've done even since November.
Yes.
Right? But one of the things that you've done, and specifically in your dedication to gender equity, is issuing a joint statement with the Human Rights Commission. So in that statement, for folks who may not have seen it, you have reaffirmed your commitment to supporting the LGBTQIA community and enforcing the state's anti-discrimination laws, regardless of what may come down from any changes to federal policy. So a question that I had was, certainly as a leader, kind of showing a strong commitment to gender equity, how do you see Vermont's approach serving as a model for other states? And as part of that, what steps can each one of us do and you do to uphold and strengthen our workplace, in our community, in our commitment to gender equity initiatives and supporting our LGBTQIA community?
Well, I would begin by saying one of the beliefs I have is that people who are anti-LGBTQ, are racist, are sexist, they struggle with dehumanizing people who are human. And I think Vermont is protected by people who might even be inclined to do that because we're so small. Everyone knows each other, and it's very hard to other someone you see in the grocery store or at the library or at your kid's soccer game. And I think Vermont has been a leader in this space of equity. I'm very proud, of course, of that. But I do think we have this like fertile ground for that just because we're so small. And then you combine that with our embrace of liberalism and our history, and then the history becomes our future as we sort of advertise ourselves with our history to people who might come here because they're LGBTQ. I mean, I have several friends, probably many of us do, who moved here because they felt it was a good place to be safe and be who they are and be free. I think something that I always find ironic is the concept of freedom. People who are very conservative think that that's their thing. And I always think that's so funny because it's obviously not. If you get to be who you are free. One of the things that I have tried to do as a leader is use communication. And if you look at our leaders here in Vermont, you will see on our social media channels, I'm one of the ones who is on there a lot. And because our current media in terms of newspapers is somewhat beleaguered compared to the way that it used to be, I think it's even more important that I show up on social media and communicate things to people. The joint statement that we did with the Human Rights Commission was part of that, to name out loud publicly, to reassure people and say back, this is still Vermont, this place that we love, where people are seen as being equal and we accept people for who they are, is still the Vermont that exists. And wanting to say that out loud. And it's wonderful that we have a great relationship with the Human Rights Commission. Just to be boring, let me explain a little bit about the different roles. The Human Rights Commission handles cases of discrimination in the public sector, like Public Accommodations Act stuff. We handle employment space, and we receive all the complaints that relate, and we investigate discrimination in the employment space. So we work together, and that's why that joint statement was right for us, because we knew that we had that overlapping sort of interest. So
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you so much. What a wonderful talk. And thank you for your advocacy on behalf of our college and others who are in science. The proposed cut just in the facilities and administrator, the F&A, the indirect rate, would have been devastating for us and for every medical school and every institution of higher learning. So thank you for partnering with the other states and that being, at least for now, settled, although we need to keep our eye on the issue. I really appreciate the advice you're giving to those who are up and coming. Any advice you can provide for the men in the audience or the men who might not be in the audience, and for us in terms of allyship, which is a concept that I learned through the ongoing educational series that we have here, how we can do better. Your experiences, I personally am ashamed of the experiences people come up through in a lawyer's office or in a dentist's office or in medicine or in science. Any advice for those in the audience who are listening on how we can make it better?
I so appreciate that question. One of the areas, well, I'm trying to be sympathetic, what I feel if I were a man and trying to be an ally. And one of the things that I find challenging is inviting discomfort. Say, I could just keep my mouth shut, and that would be easy. But if I say something, it might be uncomfortable. And some of that is even asking, like, how can I support you? One of the, we have a team, our front office. I'm here with Amelia Vath, who is in our front office, but we have a couple of women, a couple of men in the front office, and the men have been wonderful at having that conversation with me, and then they put into practice what I hope they would. One of the challenges that women have is this, as I mentioned in my talk, role in credulity. And one thing that the men in the front office will do is refer to me almost unnecessarily a lot, like, well, Charity thinks this. They could have just said, our office thinks this, or we think this, but they'll say my name, and it reminds everybody who's in charge. So that's a small thing. I think that it's knowing when to talk and when not to talk. Sometimes if men are in this space, if men are talking, it means that no woman can, because they're holding the space themselves. But I also think there's a moment to speak up, and having uncomfortable conversations with the women especially in your professional life. If you see something where you're like, that kind of felt like mansplaining, it's always appropriate in my mind to talk to someone afterwards and say, was it me or was that guy mansplaining you? That's worked for me, and it relieves the tension, because what I found for me is if I don't talk about it, I carry the burden quietly of frustration, or disappointment. Like, I worked just as hard as a man to get here. Why am I treated differently? The thing that is also a release for me is to be able to come and talk about it with other people like you, to say, this is my experience, so that we can all move forward together. And that's been very helpful. There are also formal ways that men can get involved. Obviously, being involved with an organization or an initiative like this is one way. When I ran for office, after participating in a campaign school for women, which is called Emerge Vermont. And Emerge Vermont has a Men for Emerge. And so people who support me, in my kitchen cabinet, the people who are really close, I say, you have to be a Man for Emerge, and you have to donate and be on the list. It shows that you're showing up for women. And there's, sometimes they'll have an event and it's really sponsored by the Men for Emerge. So encouraging you to show up in that space as well, and always stay educated. My favorite way of staying educated is I read memoirs that people have written, or I listen to them in the car. I always have a memoir going. And when I was thinking I wanted to run for office, I read like every memoir written by every woman ever who was in the political world. So I've read like everyone who ran for president. I haven't, if Shirley Chisholm has a memoir, I have not read that one, but all the other ones I think I've read. I've read everything Hillary Clinton ever wrote. Madeline Kunin, ditto, all her books of poetry are at my house. So that I've learned a lot by learning from others' experiences. So that's another thing that I think is always helpful if you are a man who, you know, are interested in doing a better job at showing up for women. Really learning about the experiences that women have had, I think, is very helpful.
Hi.
Hi.
I've worked here at UVM for many years, and my family is also historically Vermont family too. And I remember when Madeline was governor and I was a schoolgirl. And so I can identify with a lot of things that you say. And you talked a little bit about how you were hoping that there was some Republican AGs that may join in, and you've talked about the experiences in your own office. Can you address anything else about the national view that you have, particularly in the AG office, and any optimism there? Anything that you have? That's what I'm looking for, is some hope.
Well, one thing I will say that I've noticed is in the attorneys general I've met who are Republican, they're all like lovely people. And some of them are much less conservative than they run on, if you will. But they are playing to the people who elect them, or they're actually saying, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I'm representing the state and therefore, and some of them are extremely conservative and it's not going to change. But there's others who, you know, I'll give an example. We're really friendly with the New Hampshire Attorney General, who's a Republican. He's great. He's been really helpful to us actually in some of the investigations we've done nationally, because some of those very conservative Republicans won't participate, and we need, for the National AG Association, we need a Republican and a Democrat. And so we'll be like, hey, can you sign the form for us so we can continue our investigation? And he's been wonderful. So I think it is a really uncomfortable place for some of those moderate Republicans, but I really think this is all going to shake out. What we're seeing is, and I mean, those of us who are older remember the like, oh, we do this and then we go back, and we do this and we go back. And I think what we're seeing now is that the back, but we're going to be going forward. And I think we're going to be going forward in less than 2 years in the midterms, because we already have a very close House. And I just don't think that people are going to enjoy the roller coaster, and especially older people who like stability, and older people are the ones who vote. That's why if you look at my campaign account, you'll see that I always pick in my social media songs from like, you know, before 1990. And my team would be like, Charity, what song should we use? And I would be like, Rolling Stones. I was trying to find the good stuff that the baby boomers would like because they vote. So that, I don't know how hopeful that is. I do feel like this is a moment in time. And keep in mind, anytime there is an unconstitutional law or a law that violates, an action that violates federal law, the state can be represented by me, and we can sue. If we have standing, we'll show up and we'll sue. And we see other people who have standing means you're the right person who can sue. You know, if you broke your leg, I couldn't sue. I have nothing to do with, with you, but you can sue. You have standing. We see other people who have standing. The state might not have standing, but an individual or an organization might have standing. We see them they're standing up and suing as well and getting results. So I think that there's just a lot of us. It is not going to be pretty. It's going to be messy. But we're going to keep showing up. And then I do think in the midterms, we're going to have a lot of hope there. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Katie Wells. This is more of a compliment to you. Really appreciate all the advocacy that you've done. I've spoken with Senator Lyons a couple of times around Proposition 4 and the hope that that will go forward next November to codify health equity into our Vermont Constitution. And just for all of us in the room that know that hopefully that will be coming, and just really, again, appreciate your support of that movement forward. So thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Any other questions?
I'll say our wonderful citizen legislature, we're so lucky to have people like Senator Lyons, who I think she was a professor here. She's like a biologist. So we have all kinds of people passing laws, which is a great way to do things.
Hi, thank you so much, Attorney General Clark, for your presentation and your being with us. I'm Dr. Mimi Reardon. I'm one of the old people around here now. But I just wanted to mention, I came here to this medical school in 1963.
Wow.
And there weren't very many women
Yeah.
around at that time. But I do want to recognize that this College of Medicine has been very helpful for women. There have been times that there have been problems, but for the most part, it has really been a very supportive college for women. And I guess I'd like to mention that there is a memoir that maybe you haven't read. It just came out this past year. It's about Dr. Mary Putnam Jacoby, who was a physician in New York City, one of the first women physicians in this country. And there is a lot about women leadership within our country, England and France in this memoir. So I thought I'd just share it.
Okay, I recognize the name. I'm not sure.
Jacoby is a city hospital in New York.
I lived in New York, maybe that's
And
why.
her husband, Abraham Jacoby, was one of the leaders in pediatrics. And Albert Einstein is associated with that
Cool.
hospital.
Very cool. I want to tell a little story. My daughter's grandfather's like long-term law partner, and now they are like best friends. I'm not really sure what's going on. Okay, well, just stick with me. She's 101 years old, and she graduated from law school, from Harvard Law School, 14 years before Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so when I met her for the first time, I was very excited to get all of her tips. So we were at a dinner. It was the grandfather's birthday, and I somehow finagled a seat like close to her so I could be like, Shirley. So it's like, what advice did you learn as a young, like, what can you pass on to me? And she thought a minute and she said, okay, listen, when you go out to lunch with the men, you cannot have more than one martini. And I was like, this is not translating to the year 2019 or whatever I saw her. But I have followed her advice scrupulously.
Hi, I'm Kathy Mariani. Thank you so much. Can you speak a little bit of the shield laws in Vermont that have been in place for a couple of years and how you feel about them protecting us in this with the executive orders right now?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the executive orders. A lot of the executive orders are just like straight bloviating. They don't do anything. They're just words. And then at the end, there's always like this standard language. If we're not breaking any laws here, we can't break any laws. Like, there's language that they put in that you're like, this whole thing is just not legal. So you wrote a bunch of words, and at the end you're saying, to the extent that this breaks the law, it isn't effective. And also you can't even do what you're trying to do via an executive order. So we have been analyzing every single executive order we have. We're carefully looking at each one to see, is this actionable? Should we be suing here? Can we sue here? And most of them, not only can we not sue, the reason why we can't sue is because there's no injury, because nothing happens. And some of them there's an anticipation of something bad happening, because it will say, hey, agency or department, I would like you to look into this and give me recommendations. So just keep that in mind when he comes out with yet another executive order. We're analyzing each one to see what the angles are, and then look and see, does this even really do anything? When it comes to our shield laws, we have a lot to be proud of here. The legislature in Vermont, which when I worked in the governor's office, I came back, I was a lawyer, I moved to New York, I had a baby, and then I came back to the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and I went into the state house, and I had been like 18 years or something, or 14 years. And I remember looking around and being like, oh, the women run the place now. And they really did. And those women saw into the future and said, we're going to put things in place to pass a shield law and to enshrine the right to abortion in our Constitution, which I'm going to footnote this. Does anyone know how many towns in Vermont voted to enshrine the right to abortion in our Constitution? It's 100% of the towns. Not one town, not even like in the Northeast Kingdom where people are voting for Donald Trump. Literally every single town had a majority of voters vote to enshrine the right to abortion in our Constitution. When I say Vermonters like freedom, this is what I'm talking about. And that is, I think, valuable to hold on to. Like, this is where we stand. And I like to brag about that when I leave the state too. The SHIELD laws were designed to be as protective as possible. We have not had to put them into place yet here in Vermont, but New York has. So we're monitoring that very closely. We're also really lucky that everyone's on the same page here, including the leaders. So yes, we have a Republican governor and a Republican lieutenant governor. They're champions of abortion rights as well and of freedom as well. So, I want to reassure you there too. We have good leaders. So we haven't exercised that. We haven't that muscle quite yet, but I'm as confident as you can be because it is as restrictive, as protective as we can have it be. So we'll see how things shake out in New York, and yeah, we're monitoring that one too.
Question from the virtual audience?
Okay, so here's a question from online. We're seeing cisgender women pitted against trans folks in any number of bills, executive orders, etc. Can you speak to your approach and the state's commitment to all women in ways you might recommend that cisgender women can grapple with transphobia in service of building a bigger movement against gender essentialism?
That's a great question. I have approached, well, I should give a little background. When I worked in the governor's office was when the Baker versus State decision came down that resulted in the legislature passing civil unions. I literally wrote my law school essay application essay on civil unions and on gay marriage. And so even though I'm straight, I've consider myself an ally and have always been, my eyes were open during that process. And when I was in law school, I was the token straight member of the Lambda Law Society, like the club for LGBTQ people, because I was like, we have to be an ally. When it comes to trans issues, for me, I didn't know a lot about trans issues until recently. So number one is cis women need to be educating ourselves and learning and being, open to learning and open-minded about this. Like 20 years ago, I don't think many people who weren't trans really understood what it meant to be trans. And so we're in a space where we get to be learning, and that's okay too. One of the things that values that I have is mind your own business. And I like to joke that our state motto, freedom and unity, is translated into modern language. Love your neighbor and mind your own business. So if we all would just do that, the world would be a better place. And I think sometimes when I was just on a podcast on Monday, and I remember I fumbled through this, and I hope I don't fumble through it again, but people who are so obsessed with trans people, mind your own business. And why are you so obsessed? It's just embarrassing. You do you, this person gets to do them. Okay, they have this need or that need. Well, we're all here, we're all people. Let's meet them where they are so we can support them in being the best person they can be, the right person for themselves, not for you. So that's kind of the philosophy that I have taken. I also think it's really important. When I was little, I was the defender of the nerds on the playground. You wore green on Thursday, I was there for you on the playground. I had my sisters, my twin sister, she's very tall and big. We have a brother also there. No one messed with us. And I feel sometimes like that's what I have to do all the time now because of Donald Trump. But when it comes to that issue, my instinct is always protect this person, you mind your own business, let people live their lives. That is probably not a very refined way of approaching things, but I just think as a fundamental, it's almost like that old book, everything you need to learn about life you learned in kindergarten. And I feel just treating people with love and respect is a great place to start. So that was, I'm not sure I fully answered the question, but I did the best I could. I'm also happy to answer questions about process from the office if you're curious. We've obviously had a lot going on recently with the new administration. I'm happy to answer questions if you have war stories about the campaign that I ran in 2022.
Hi, thank you so much for your address. This was just outstanding. And I just couldn't help but think as I was listening to you that it would be so nice to share this with even more people who aren't online or here. Is this being recorded
Yes.
for us to share? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you. I feel like this is one of the first times I've felt hope about our country's affairs since November. So
Oh.
that people like you are working on our state's behalf and on our country's behalf is really heartening. So thank you for all that you do.
That's so nice to hear. Well, that's really nice to hear. I see a lot of good work, and I'm very fortunate. I will say, working alongside the other Democratic attorneys general, some of these people are impressive. Like, we have not, Kamala Harris, of course, was a former AG, and we certainly have some people who are going to be vice president someday in our among us. They're really impressive, and the staffs that we have are unbelievably hardworking. We have 2 lawyers in my office who are in our appellate unit. The appellate unit are experts in constitutional law, and so they're the ones who have taken lead on this, and they work every single day. Like, town meeting day, we had a day off, they were working. You know, you get an email at 10 at night, I'm texting them like 6 in the morning. You know, they're constantly working, they're working so hard. So I'm here giving the speeches and having fun with you, but they're actually writing briefs right now and probably on calls with other staff members from other states. It's funny because of my experience, every single day we have a call with the other AGs we work with every single day. And because of that, I feel like we used to meet like every couple weeks, you know, or maybe we'd see each other at a conference, we would talk, especially the New England people, but I get to see them every day. I feel like more positive and optimistic about our country because I can see all these incredible leaders. The other thing that I'm really proud of, and that's just like a brag moment, is the Democratic AGs are incredibly diverse. And of course, we see it every time we get together, but it's something to really be proud of. And when I was elected, I think there was like one white man, and everyone else was a person of color or a woman during my like class. And this past year, there was one, again, I think there was like one there was North Carolina as a white guy too. But I mean, there's just like so many people of color and such diversity. And I think that it's nice to be reminded, no, this is America. I feel like this is the America we were promised when Barack Obama was president. And I don't know how we got off track, but we're bushwhacking our way through the backcountry to get back on the Obama track.
So since you opened it up to any questions, I'm really curious where we're going. This separation of church and state, it seems to have gone off the rails. It seems like we're going backwards and we're being forced to agree with the conservative Christian values. I'm a Christian, I was raised that way, but this is crazy to me. What is your sense of how this is going to shake out?
Well, so I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and our country was, as we know, founded like Puritans came here initially, and that religion evolved over time, and now it's the most liberal. It was very, very conservative, obviously, and now it's the most liberal. It's the Congregational Church and the Unitarian Church. So I always liked it when people say our country was founded by Christians. I was like, oh, and Unitarian Universalists, like crazy hippies, they were there too. So keep that in mind, that they want to say freedom of religion means Christian, but that's not what it means. We have a diversity of religion in this country. One thing that does, normally in Vermont, we are the least religious, and that's not that we're not spiritual, we are, but we don't necessarily affiliate, we don't feel the need to affiliate to feel spiritual. And we also have a lot of community outside of churches, where I think some people in other states, they go to church for community and not necessarily for the spirituality. But so we, of course, have a unique perspective because we are like the most, we have the most percentage of people who are not affiliated. They are the nuns, if you say N-O-N-E, the nuns who aren't affiliated with any formal religion. We do have in the Constitution the free exercise clause. One thing that I'm observing, the free exercise of your religion. One thing that I'm observing with trying to take a mindset of curiosity, which I would invite you to take that perspective, just to let yourself be curious. We do have a very religious court right now. In that there's a lot of people who are Catholic and practicing devout. And so it's nice to just have a space, hold a space of curiosity and see what happens. But this is one of those other issues where we might be on a journey. You know, what if there's a decision that happens and it's way more conservative than we are, but maybe it's like the Dobbs decision, which took away Roe v. Wade. Maybe it's like, oh, oops, overcorrected. And now everyone's mad and that we're in this messy area where we're having to kind of, you know, lessen the enthusiasm for that decision. It's like they didn't want to brag about it during the election anymore because they realized, oops, no one likes this. Not no one, but I think this maybe is another one of those issues. And I just want to remind you, like, I don't like saying this, but the truth is you are safe here in Vermont. And while if you get to a point where you need to reassure yourself, remember that you are safe in Vermont. And we have a wonderful, if you ever need a pick-me-up, drive down to Montpelier, go to the State House, get a tour. You will see everybody just getting along. You know, all the Republicans are there and the Democrats and the progressives and everyone's just getting along. And it really is uplifting. But I don't like feeling that way because I love my whole country, not just this state. And I want everyone to be okay. And that's a good thing that we care for each other. But if you need that, just remember you are safe here in Vermont. We've got time for one more question, if anyone's interested.
Hi, I'm an undergraduate in the College of Nursing and Health Sciences. And you mentioned we're safe in Vermont. And so I'm from Massachusetts and I'm also going to be safe in Massachusetts.
Yes.
But I have two roommates and one is from Austin, Texas, and the other is from New Orleans, Louisiana. And they both have a lot of anxiety about their situations. And, you know, I kind of joked, oh, like, it's fine. We're in New England. And they're like, well, I have to go home. I have to go home to my state. So is there anything that you can say to, and I think that's kind of a general consensus from the undergraduate population, is we don't live here full time. We don't live in Vermont. So kind of like, is there anything you have to say to individuals that are experiencing that anxiety?
It's just, as a mom, it like makes me so mad. If I were in college and I weren't from New England, I weren't from the Northeast where I was safe, I would do two things before I went home. One, I would get an IUD. And then the second thing I would do is I would run for office. Because that is truthfully how this is going to happen. That is how we really got in some ways why Congress looks the way it looks because of 2018. And people are like, oh, hell no. So that is where we need to be heading. If you have one of your friends is interested, and it's very difficult when you're a woman because you don't see you don't see people who look like you. You're told you're literally shattering the glass ceiling. And let me tell you, it ain't easy. But that's what's going to happen. We all have to run for office. And the way that you do it is one of the best classes I ever took at the University of Vermont was called voting behavior. I took it and I don't even know if it's taught anymore, but that's what when I ran for office, that's what I was drawing on. But not even just running for office, like making my way to run for office because I knew, okay, they really studied presidents. I don't want to be president, but okay, if you're president, you have to be, okay, a lawyer, check. Okay, a white man, a little rocky there. You know, there's certain things I could do. And similarly, if you want to run for office, you have to start out like Madeline Kunin did. She ran for the school board. Howard Dean, he got involved with the bike path. That's why we have a bike path, is because he, as we know, is very enthusiastic. So he was really, really involved. He's, by the way, the person who makes fun of that the most. So I'm in good space. So running for office is the answer. And that sounds very dramatic. Not everybody can run for office. But even if you run for whatever thing that you have, whatever, and it doesn't matter that you're young. If you're over 18, they will have you, right? In some cases, you don't even have to be 18, but run for the school board, run for the select board, run for the city council, I'm on the library board, run for all of this. And because Austin, Texas is made up of your friend and other people. Louisiana is made up of your friend and other people. Why do the other people get to say, no, it's your friend? And I know that doesn't necessarily help with anxiety. We will leave the medical school to anxiety. But truthfully, I feel like there should be a movement now of young people saying, what do we want our country to be? Because this ain't it. And then how do you build your way there? Take voting behavior like I did and figure out, okay, what do I need to do so that I can be this force for change that our country needs right now? So that was a good last question. Thank you.
So thank you. I mean, I think it's great to end on that positive note, hope and action too, right? So thank you for that. So it's my pleasure to now move into the awards ceremony portion of the celebration. I know that 1 o'clock is tough for some folks and folks may need to leave. And so if you need to get up and move around, by all means, feel free to do so at this point. So bestowing of awards serves multiple purposes in academic medicine. Not only does it call out the achievements and contributions of our individuals, but it broadcasts the individual's presence to a wider audience and is a signifier of the regional, national, or international reputation of that individual. The nominees received for the Gender Equity Awards, all of whom are listed in your program, so you might have to flip the page over that you received, but it's on the back there, were stellar. It's truly a testament to the talent and commitment that we have among us. Ultimately, the awards committee created a slate of nominees, and Dean Page had the very difficult and challenging job of determining and selecting the honorees today. So presenting the awards today along Dean Page are Dr. Rebecca Wilcox, Associate Dean for Faculty and the 2024 recipient of the Polaris Award for Outstanding Mentorship, and Dr. Kareen Sahakayan, Assistant Professor of Radiology and a 2024 recipient of the Rising Star Emerging Professional Award. Come on up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Conan. Our first award today is the Polaris Award for Outstanding Mentorship. Polaris is also known as the Pole Star of the North Star, and it's anchored at due north while the remainder of the northern sky rotates around it. Thus, it stands as a beacon or like a constant navigational point for those finding their way on their journey. I challenge you to find it yourself. You can step out of the hospital or the grocery store tonight on any clear night, look up. Polaris is the brightest star in Ursus Minor, also known as the Little Dipper. So just look for the brightest star in that tip of the Little Dipper, and that's where it is. So Larner College of Medicine, we recognize the Polaris Award as honoring faculty or staff members who provide outstanding formal or informal mentoring for Larner College of Medicine women and or gender diverse community members. So the winner of the 2025 Polaris Award goes to Dr. Kristen Pierce. I'm going to read to you her nomination statement. Dr. Kristen Pierce is a leader and guide for many of her junior female identified faculty in the Department of Medicine. In her role as Vice Chair for Faculty Affairs, Dr. Pierce is the go-to for advice and mentorship related to academic advancement. Not only does she take time to thoughtfully review CVs and discuss them with each person, but she offers actionable advice and feedback that helps those she advises understanding the nuances of promotion and the perspectives of those reviewing the portfolios. From my own experience, as well as those many others, I have referred to Dr. Pierce to discuss academic promotion. She has a particular strength in helping women see through their, quote, imposter syndrome, end quote, that otherwise may lead to fewer applications for promotion. I truly believe that her mentorship has been part of what has helped improve the promotion rates of our female identified LCOM faculty in the past few years. In addition, she is caring, relatable person who offers an ear and sage advice as both a woman and a mother in academic medical world. And our community is so much better with her in it. Dr. Pierce could not be with us in person today. However, I'm honored to read her words and her response on her behalf. So these are the words of Dr. Pierce. To start, I would like to say I am sorry I could not be in person to accept this award. It is a huge and unexpected honor. I would also like to thank Dean Page and the selection committee for the award, and special thanks to Dr. Berry for her very kind nomination. Throughout my career, I have had the good fortune to have many exceptional mentors who have supported me at every stage of my journey, and many who continue to do so. It is through these relationships I have had the courage to explore and create new opportunities. Mentorship in our career and in our everyday lives is essential to both personal and professional development, and demonstrating skills and leadership in a positive manner ensures that we carry on the legacies of those who came before us. In years past, I have nominated several faculty members for these awards, all of whom do amazing work with students, trainees, faculty, and staff. I am most honored to be recognized as part of this phenomenal group of colleagues. Again, thank you for such an amazing recognition and honor. Congratulations to all the exceptional nominees and award recipients this year. Thank you, Dr. Pierce.
Our next award is Gender Equity Champion Award. Equity and inclusion are inextricably linked to UVM Larner College of Medicine mission of education, research, and patient care. In recognition of that mission, many college faculty, staff, students, and trainees are actively engaged in championing equity and inclusion in multiple local, regional, and global settings. This award recognizes Larner College of Medicine community members, faculty, staff, and students who demonstrated outstanding commitment and service to the advancement of women and gender diverse population beyond the scope of their job, area of research, or training. This year, due to exceptional nomination, both a faculty member and a student award are being bestowed. Our first Gender Equity Champion Award for 2025 goes to Shrey Patel, a medical student in the class of 2026. Their nominator, a fellow medical student, speaks to their advocacy for gender equity in the Larner College of Medicine community and beyond. The nominator notes, Shrey Patel is an excellent example of a champion for gender equality. Throughout their years at the college, they have worked to get involved in the gender diverse community in Burlington and do meaningful work. They participated in Schweitzer projects involving working with trans youth and their families to help them talk about transitioning and building stronger interpersonal relationships. They led the development of a free website for queer youth to submit questions they have about their medical transition. They have also created a learning module for pediatric medical providers in Vermont based on Jill Patterson histories of the transgender child to help them provide better care for their transgender patients. As a part of the community themselves, Shrey works tirelessly to make medicine more inclusive, but also create safe spaces for gender diverse people inside and outside of the hospital. Shrey couldn't join us in person today, but they will be accepting their award virtually. Please join me in congratulating Shrey Patel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Sahakian, and thank you so much to Dean Page and to the selection committee for this award. It's been one of the greatest privileges of my medical training so far to have the opportunity to work towards equity for gender diverse youth in so many different contexts and to learn directly from their grit and their resilience. Working with youth who are all too familiar with the many ways in which their rights are being threatened right now has made us all only want to keep working harder. I don't believe that any part of this could have been done without the foundations laid by my peers and my mentors, which speaks to the many ways in which gender equity work is a true community effort. I'm so grateful and honored to be recognized today for playing even just a small role in this work and for everyone who's made it possible. Thank you.
Okay. Our second recipient is Dr. Kathy Mariani, Associate Professor of Family Medicine. Dr. Mariani's nominator notes her many accomplishments in gender equity. Okay. Oh, we just made it flip. There she is. Okay. Dr. Mariani has been in active clinical practice with UVM since 2008, and her admirable work within and outside the organization has been focused on the medical wellness of adolescent and marginalized patients. Since 2018, she has been standing faculty on the UVM Office for Primary Care, AHEC is how we refer to it, program, faculty for the Vermont Child Health Improvement Project, and she serves as the chair of the UVM Pre-Medical Enhancement Program, often referred to as PEP. What is unique about her work is her dedication to support for the wellness of LGBTQIA+ community through these respective lenses. Beyond the charter of these programs, I have witnessed the humanity that she brings to her work, from helping students with transportation to supporting their mental wellness in challenging environments. She personally connects with the individuals she works with and remains actionable. Her work in 2019 was instrumental in the development of creating a gender identity section for our electronic medical record via the UVM Gender Identity Task Force. This passion, while being an active clinical physician, shows the importance of her mission in supporting the LGBTQIA+ community. Regarding her clinical practice, she focuses on adolescent health with respect to gender diverse youth, intimate partner violence, and eating disorders. Her medical student and resident teaching focuses heavily on gender affirmative care and mental health improvement. She has also developed a transgender health curriculum series for primary care and pediatric practices across multiple Vermont clinical sites. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Mariani.
Thank you. Wow. I wasn't sure they were talking about this right person. Like looking around, who is that? So I'm so deeply honored for this award, especially at this moment in history when everything that I thought and took for granted and thought was unshakable is under attack. As a privileged, cisgender, white, heterosexual woman, I do not share the lived experience of so many in our marginalized communities. Specifically, my gender diverse friends, colleagues, family, students, and patients. They're the ones who deserve this recognition. I'm continued humbled by their courage, risking so much in order to be their true selves. I am incredibly grateful to be entrusted with the opportunity to journey with them on their journey to be themselves. I strive in that role to not cause harm as part of a health system that is often not safe or affirming. Now more than ever, we must stand together. Thank you, Charity. And stand up for one another. John Lewis is one of my favorites, says, "Get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America." That's never been more meaningful. Even as recently as right after the election, I had a student who was distraught and said, "I've been erased." And I said, no, we're not going backwards. We're not going back to the 1950s when my cousin transitioned, my dad's great cousin, second cousin. We're not even going back 15 years to when nothing was covered by insurance, and even if you could get gender affirming care. In fact, now with all the hostilities over the past month, all I can tell my patients and students now is I have no idea what the future holds. All I can say is that you're not going to be abandoned. And I say that today, thank you to all our leaders, to Charity across the country who have not abandoned us as providers of gender affirming care to youth, who have our back, and most importantly, who support and protect our patients and community. Thank you.
Our next award is the Rising Star Emerging Professional Award. This award recognizes a woman or gender diverse faculty or staff member at the Larner College of Medicine who is in the early stage of their career, who demonstrates excellence in contributions to students, colleagues, and or institution in the areas of gender equity and inclusion through service, program development, teaching, research, or beyond. The awardee also shows the promise for future contributions and leadership in their field, as well as in achieving goals for the advancement of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our 2025 Rising Star Award goes to Dr. Anna Ricci. Dr. Ricci was nominated by multiple members of the College of Medicine. As one of nomination statements says, Dr. Ricci joined the Neurological Science Department in 2022 as Assistant Professor in Education Scholar Pathway. Since then, she has been active in promoting DEI in our department through her service as department champion and her role as educator. In her role as DEI champion, she immediately started identifying ways to create a more inclusive work environment for all department members, improve DEI-specific training opportunities within the department, and share best practices for creating a positive learning environment for students. Dr. Ricci leads monthly meetings of Departmental DEI in Education Working Group. Under her leadership, these meetings provide a space for faculty, clinicians, and department members to discuss concerns and challenges, best practices for inclusive education technique, and to plan future education and training opportunities. These meetings have created a regular opportunity for department members to discuss challenging topics with each other in open environment and have helped to build community among department members. As anatomy educator, Dr. Ricci strives to create inclusive, supportive, and positive learning environment. She educated herself on inclusive teaching approach and worked to improve the teaching of pelvic anatomy using inclusive terminology and imagery to represent the diversity of bodies beyond the traditional binary presentation that usually exists in anatomy textbooks. In her time here, she demonstrated strong commitment to growth, education, and self-reflection by continuing her own professional development in areas related to bias, inclusive teaching, and equity. And finally, as a colleague, Dr. Ricci is supportive, seeks out collaborative solutions, solicits feedback, and fosters inclusive environment. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Ricci.
All right. Thank you so much for this award. It really means a lot. I just want to start by first thanking the people that nominated me and thought of me to for this award, and for the really kind and thoughtful words that they put in the nomination. It really means a lot to me. I also want to thank the committee that reviewed all of the nominations, and the dean for then selecting me for this award among all of the people that were nominated and really deserving of an award like this. I also want to highlight that this is really an award that I see representing the community in our department, because it's a really inclusive community that a lot of people work to generate. So I just want to highlight that it's really a whole team of people in our whole department that are working towards inclusivity and equity among our department. And I just want to highlight that. And there's also a lot of support from our department leadership and the leadership at the College of Medicine in events like this that really support and highlight these types of events. So I just want to say thank you for all of that. And I'm really honored.
Right, our final award this afternoon. It's the Gender Equity Outstanding Achievement in Medicine and Science. This award is given to a woman, a gender diverse faculty member within the Larner College of Medicine who has demonstrated outstanding achievement in medicine and science through research, education, or service. Additionally, this individual must be recognized at a national and/or international level for their scientific medical achievements and serve as a role model to women or gender diverse community members at the Larner College of Medicine. I am really thrilled to say the 2025 Gender Equity Outstanding Achievement in Medicine and Science Award goes to Dr. Julie Dumas. Let me just give you a sense of what her narrator notes. Dr. Julie Dumas is professor and vice chair for faculty in the Department of Psychiatry. She is a cognitive psychologist with extensive training in combining psychopharmacology and functioning imaging to study cognition in postmenopausal women. She has developed a research program over the last 20 years at UVM, examining neurobiology underlying the cognition in middle-aged women. She has been supported by 3 NIH R01s, along with R56, R21, and K01 awards focused on menopause and the brain. Dr. Dumas is the go-to expert, she really is, on the cognitive neuroscience of menopause at the national level, with consistent NIH funding and peer-reviewed publications for the last 20 years. Dr. Dumas also has a strong mentoring track record with early career scientists at UVM, as well as nationally in her specialty research field of neuroscience of mental health in women. At the national level, Dr. Dumas is a mentor in 4 NIH-funded R25 mentorship and education programs, and she is the PI of one of them focused on geriatric mental health. 2 of these programs focus on mentioning early career scientists from underrepresented and immigrant backgrounds. This impressive list of awards mentorship programs highlights Dr. Dumas's generosity with her time and her expertise in mentoring the next generation of scientists across a broad array of specialty areas, from women's mental health to the neuroscience of addiction to health science in middle school girls. Thus, Dr. Dumas demonstrates sustained outstanding achievement in both research and education. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Dumas.
Since I'm an expert in memory and middle age, I'm going to use some notes here. Thank you very much, Dr. Wilcox, for those kind words. Thank you to the Gender Equity Award Selection Committee and Dean Page. Thank you to Dr. Rob Altoff, my chair, for nominating me. And I'm truly honored to be this year's Outstanding Achievement Award winner. As Dr. Wilcox mentioned, I've been at UVM for over 20 years doing research in human psychopharmacology and combining that with neuroscience to understand how the brain works after menopause and in normal aging. The work that we do here at UVM is really unique, and there's very few people doing it at other places in the country. So I'm very grateful to the LCOM and the Department of Psychiatry for their support of the facilities, as well as the personnel that allow a PhD like me to do this kind of human clinical research. This kind of research is also a team sport, so have great collaborators here at UVM. I'd like to thank Alexi Potter in psychiatry, Jim Boyd in neurology, Lisa McGee in OBGYN, and Larry Keene in pediatrics. My research team are the ones doing the heavy lifting, and I'd like to thank Jenna McCarowitz, Abigail Testo, and Angeles Ozal. The nurses and staff at the Clinical Research Center and the technologists at the MRI Center make all this possible with their professionalism and care for high quality work. And finally, I want to thank the women of Vermont who have volunteered for my studies for the past 20 years. It's always been really easy to recruit participants to do these crazy design studies that we have been making up. Because in Vermont, not only do women want to understand themselves, but they care about making a better future for their children and beyond. And most importantly, women in Vermont believe in science. So thank you. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our celebration of gender equity in medicine and science. Congratulations to each of our amazing award recipients and nominees. I'm honored to be part of this community and to continue to marvel and be impressed by the energy and commitment to the gender equity at the Larner College of Medicine. My wish is for us to continue to come together as a supportive community to continue this journey towards equity. Thanks to each and every one of you for being here, both virtually and in person, and have a great afternoon.